The visit by U.S. President Barack Obama to Cuba is being called history-making. President Obama wants to help drive economic and political reform in the country, yet critics are saying the timing of his trip is a little late, happening in his last year in office. Joining me in our studio to discuss this is Jason Marczak. He is the director of the Latin America Economic Growth Initiative at the Atlantic Council. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Thanks, Elaine.
Why did President Obama wait so long to visit Cuba? Talk about the timing of this trip.
Well, I don't think it's too long. I think you have to put this in context. The fact that the opening with Cuba started in December of 2014, so it's been 16 months since we had this first opening. The embassy in Cuba opened up last summer, so this ended 50 some odd years of a lack of diplomatic relations. And I think rather than criticizing that this visit is happening too late, some actually are saying this visit is happening too early. I think the visit is happening about the right time. I mean, we've seen about a year and a half almost of the president's actions, not only the actions of December 2014, but multiple additional executive decrees that have helped to booster relations between the two countries. And we've seen some of the benefits of that. We've seen the benefits in Cuba with increased access to Wi-Fi, for example, for the Cuban people that wasn't there before, increased access to remittances from the Cuban private sector. And so there have been some changes. They're small and incremental, but we can't expect large changes to happen very quickly because, again, this is a relationship that was basically on ice for over 50 years.
But he said that he wanted to do something about Cuba when he began office. So here we are 7 years later. Were the political conditions more ripe this time around?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to take this in context that the President Obama has a lot on his agenda. And the president's attention is, focused on, the Middle East and many other areas of the world. And again, in Cuba, it's also a matter of building confidence with the Cuban government and also the Cuban government showing the ability to implement some of the reforms that gave the president the momentum to be able to have the opening with Cuba. And again, we have to look at this from the context of Alan Gross as well. Alan Gross had been in a Cuban, the USAID contractor who had been in a Cuban prison for many years. And the ability to negotiate a release for Alan Gross was part of the whole package that allowed for the opening in December 2014. But again, that opening in December 2014 was a year and a half in the making.
But critics in general believe that the Obama administration doesn't really place a priority on Latin America. He's visiting Argentina after his trip to Cuba. So what does he hope to accomplish there?
Well, I think again, we have to look at this in the context of everything the president has on his, or potentially her at some point, agenda on a daily basis. And Latin America doesn't rise to the top of the president's to-do list. This is not a region in crisis. This is a region with, macroeconomic stability, rule of law in general. And so it's hard to, when you have crises across the world, to really put Latin America at the front and center of your attention.
But they're his closest neighbors.
They're our closest neighbors. The president has gone. The president was in Panama a year ago for the Summit of the Americas, and not only has he had multiple trips to the region, but so have many members of his cabinet traveled to the region. This is a area of the world that historically has not received as much attention as it should from the administration. But the real thorn in the side of U.S. relations with Latin America has traditionally been our relations with Cuba, and the fact that we didn't have relations with Cuba, and the embargo continues to be a hindrance to that relationship. But by opening up with Cuba and spending the political capital and the investment to open up with Cuba, that has really opened the doors for our broader relationships across the rest of the region. And Argentina specifically, this is a moment of great opportunity. The new government of President Mauricio Macri is only in the course of just the first 100 days unwound a lot of the issues that his predecessor, President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner, had with the larger international community. He's rolled back the capital controls, stabilized the foreign exchange rate. And so this is an opportunity to show from the U.S. side support for the government and its new direction.
So very quickly, these trips to Cuba and then to Argentina, do you think that is a more positive step in greater relations with the Latin American region?
I think definitely. Again, the fact that we have a U.S. president going to Cuba, the first time since Calvin Coolidge in 1928, this is a historic moment for U.S. relations with the rest of the region, and also going to Argentina. I mean, Argentina is a bellwether in the region. Argentina is a country that had been ruled with a very nationalist, inward-looking perspective in the last 12 years, and now Argentina has opened the sign of we're welcoming the world, right? And the president's trip there is a signal, and not only his trip there himself, but also his trip with members of the business community that will be traveling with him to Cuba and with him to Argentina is a sign that the U.S. private sector is also interested in investment opportunities in both countries.
Jason Marczak of the Atlantic Council, thank you so much for your perspective.
Great. Thank you, Elaine.